What's up YouTube, welcome back. In today's video we're going to continue the CompTIA PenTest Plus learning path on TryHackMe. We're still in the network-based vulnerabilities section. This is actually our last room, Network Services 2. We're going to be enumerating and exploiting more common network services and configurations. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we jump over to task number 1, let's go ahead and start the machine in task number 3 just because it takes a few minutes for it to load. Alright. And we are connected. All right, so task 1, get connected. So in this room is the sequel of the first network services room. So this is just a continuation of network service vulnerabilities and misconfigurations. It's just telling you how to get connected and all that good stuff. So we can go ahead and complete that. On to task number 2, understanding NFS. So NFS or network file system is a way for computers to share files over a network. It works by mounting a portion of a file system on a server, which can then be accessed by clients with appropriate privileges. To access a file, the client sends a request to the server, which checks if the user has permissions and returns a unique identifier for the file. NFS can be used to transfer files between Windows and non-Windows OSs or operating systems. So if someone wants to access a file using NFS, an RPC or remote procedure call is placed to the NFSD or network file system daemon on the server. This call takes parameters such as the file handle, name of the file to be accessed, the user's user ID, and the user's group ID. And here's more information if you want to learn a little bit more. On to the questions. So what does NFS stand for? That'll be network file system. What process allows an NFS client to interact with the remote directory as though it was a physical device? That will be mounting. And what does NFS use to represent files and directories on the server? That'll be the file handle. What protocol does NFS use to communicate between servers and clients? It uses RPC or remote procedure call. What two pieces of user data does the NFS server take as parameters for controlling user permissions? That would be the user ID and group ID. And can a Windows NFS server share files with a Linux client? Yes. Can a Linux NFS server share files with a macOS client? Yes. And what is the latest version of NFS released in 2016? So let's go ahead and look up NFS 2016 version. So it looks like it's going to be 4.2. On to task number 3, enumerating NFS. If you haven't already, go ahead and start the machine because it can take about 5 minutes to boot up. So enumeration is the process of connecting to a target host to find potential attack vectors for exploitation. To do advanced enumeration on the NFS server, you need to install the NFS-common tool and conduct a port scan using the -A and the -P tags. You can then create a directory on your system and then use the mount command to mount the NFS share to the mount point on your machine. So this Kali machine for this example. And here is an example of the command that you can run. So if you haven't already ran an nmap scan, go ahead and do this. Go ahead and type in nmap-pn-t4-a-p- if I can do that right, and then the IP 232.192 for this case. This can take like 15 minutes to run, so I already went ahead and ran it before recording. And we see the output shown below. We have port 22 open, 111, 2049, etc., etc. Conduct a port scan. How many open ports are there? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 open ports. What port contains the service that we're looking to enumerate? So if you look over here, we see port 2049. There's NFS_ACL running. So the target port that we're interested in is 2049. Now use the user sbin show mount -e in the IP to list the NFS shares. What is the name of the visible shares? Let's go ahead and type this in. Show mount -e and then the target IP 232.192. We see that we do have a home share. So let's go ahead and type that in. So that looks like that's available. Time to mount the share to our local machine. First, use the make directory tmp mount to create a directory on your machine to mount the share to. So we need to create that mount directory within the tmp directory, so that way we can mount the target machine's home share onto our our Kali machine. So go ahead and do make directory tmp mount. All right, that completed successfully. Now we're going to use this mount command over here to mount the share. So let's go ahead and do that. So you'll want to do sudo mount -t and then NFS and then the target machine IP, which is 232.192. And then we're going to mount the home share into our mount folder that's in tmp. And then no lock, so it doesn't lock it. And then of course enter your password since you're using sudo. All right, now let's go ahead and cmd to our mount folder. And now we see that we mounted the share, and the directory within the share is named cappuccino. So let's go ahead and just cd into it. All right, so this is interesting, nice. So cappuccino is the name of the directory. Have a look inside this directory and look at the files. Looks like we're inside a user's home directory. Have a look through the folders. Which of these folders could contain keys that would give us remote access to the server? That'll be the .ssh folder. Which of these keys is most useful to us? Let's go ahead and cd to it. So we have the ID_RSA, which is a private key, and then the ID_RSA.pub, which is the public key. So the key that is most useful to us is the private key, the ID_RSA. So we can go ahead and copy this key somewhere. So let's go ahead and do copy ID_RSA, move it to our TryHackMe directory, documents, TryHackMe, network services 2. Go ahead and move it over there. Great. And then we'll need to change the permission. So we'll do a change mod to 600 documents, TryHackMe, network services 2, and then the ID_RSA. Just to kind of show you, we'll do an ls-la. Now you see that the private key that we just copied over to our network services directory has read and write only privileges. So read write only for the user, which in this case is invite or my user account, and then that's it. No one else has any other permissions. Now, can we log into the machine using the SSH? Let's go ahead. Before we go ahead and try to SSH, we need to find out what the username is. And you can do that just by looking at the public key by doing ID, by catting that ID_RSA.pub. Here at the end, you can see cappuccino at polo NFS. Let's go ahead and just copy the username. Now we'll go ahead and SSH to our target machine using the cappuccino user and the 10.10.232.192 address. Go ahead and hit enter. And now we see that we are in fact in the machine. You do who am I just to show that we are cappuccino, and then if config to see the IP of the machine. So yes, we can SSH into the target machine. On to task number 4, exploiting NFS. So just because you found an NFS share on a machine doesn't mean you're done yet, or we in this case. NFS shares have root squashing enabled by default, which prevents remote users from having root access to the connected system. However, if root squashing is turned off, it allows for the creation of SUID bit files, which can be run with the permission of the file owner or group, giving you super user privileges. we can upload a bash shell executable to the NFS share, set the permissions, and then execute it through SSH to gain a root user shell. So that is what we'll do in this example. Go ahead and clear this out. So let's go ahead and run this wget command in our local directory. And so let's go ahead and paste it, wget. Now we see that we have this bash file over here. Here's a step-by-step of the actions that we're going to take to get a root shell. So first, NFS access, gain low-level privilege shell, which is what we indeed have. Upload bash executable to the NFS share. Set SUID permissions through NFS due to the misconfigured root squash. Log in through SSH, execute SUID bit bash executable, and then get root access. So first, change the directory to the mount point on your machine. So let's go ahead and go back. So now we're back over here. So let's go ahead and log into or cd into the mount. So we do see in fact that we are in the Cappuccino share. So go ahead and complete. Download the bash executable. So let's go ahead and paste it in here. So let's go ahead and download it here instead of having to move it from our other directory. So now we see over here, we do have the bash file that we just downloaded. So go ahead and complete. Now we're going to add the SUID bit permissions to the bash executable that we copied over. We'll go ahead and do a sudo change mod +s and bash. If you do an ls, you'll see that this is now this bash file over here now has a SUID bit. Now let's do a sanity check. Let's check the permissions of the bash executable using ls-la bash. What does the permission set look like? So it's going to look like this. Go ahead and copy this over. Now SSH into the machine as the user. List the directory to make sure that the bash executable is there. Now the moment of the truth is when we're going to run the dash or the bash-p, which is going to run a bash persistent shell. So let's go ahead and see if that'll give us a root and the truth. Now we'll do a ./bash and then -p. Now we get a different shell. Let's go ahead and do a who am I, and now we are root. Do a ls. Let's go ahead and cat out the flag, which will be in the root directory. Cat root txt, and there is our flag. In case this doesn't work for you and you still get the Cappuccino shell, go back to your mount share, look to see who the owner of the file is, and if it's not root, change it to root just by doing a change own root and then bash, and then you'll be able to change the permission of the file, and then try that again. So that is task number 4. Let's go to task number 5, understanding SMTP. But before we go ahead and start number 5, let's go ahead and start the machine for task number 6, enumerating SMTP, just because that takes a few minutes to boot up. So task 5, understanding SMTP. So SMTP is a protocol used to send emails, while POP and IMAP are used to retrieve them. So SMTP servers verify who is sending emails, sending outgoing mail, and then sends undeliverable messages back to the sender. When configuring an email client, SMTP server configuration is required to send outgoing emails. POP downloads the inbox from the mail server to the client, while IMAP synchronizes the current inbox with new mail on the server. The SMTP server acts as a sorting office to direct emails to the recipient's inbox, similar to a physical mail delivery, like your USPS if you're in the US. So on to the questions. What does SMTP stand for? Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. What does SMTP handle? The sending of emails. What is the first step in the SMTP process? That'll be the SMTP handshake. And what is default SMTP port? That'll be 25. Where does the SMTP server send the email if the recipient server is not accessible? That will send it to the SMTP queue, where it'll just sit there queued. On what server does the email ultimately end up on? The POP IMAP server. Can Linux machine run as an NTP server or run an NTP server? Yes. Can a Windows machine run an NTP server, SMTP server? Yes. Now we're on task 6, enumerating SMTP. So before we start, go ahead and boot the machine if you haven't already. We can use the SMTP version module in Metasploit to fingerprint poorly configured or vulnerable mail servers. We can also use the SMTP_enum module to enumerate users by feeding it to a host or a range of hosts to scan and a word list containing usernames to enumerate. Make sure you have Metasploit installed, which is by default installed on Kali Linux. So if you're using Kali, then you're good to go. Alternatively, you can use non-Metasploit tools like SMTP-user-enum to enumerate OS level user accounts on Solaris via the SMTP service. And if you haven't already, go ahead and run your nmap scan. It'll look something like this: nmap-pn-t4-a-p- and then the IP address of the target machine. But again, this can take like 20 minutes to run. So to save time, I already ran it, so let me go ahead and cat it out. We see that we have 2 ports open, SSH and SMTP. So what port is SMTP running on? 25. Okay, now we know what port we should be targeting. Let's set up Metasploit. What commands do we use for this? It'll be msf console. So let's go ahead and run msf console. If I can spell it right. And we'll do a -q tag at the end just so it's quiet, so we don't get the big MSF banner. Okay, so let's search for the module SMTP version. That'll be search SMTP version. So what is the full module name? That'll be this entire path right here. Now select the module. So use 0, and now we are now using that module. Select the module and list the options. How do we do this? You can do options. Now let's look through the options. Does everything seem correct? What is the option we need to set? That'll be the rhost. Set the correct value for the target machine. So we'll go ahead and do set rhost 10.10.69115. Then run the exploit. So we'll go ahead and hit run. What is the system mail name? That'll be polo smtp.home. What mail transfer agent or MTA is running on the SMTP server? That'll be postfix, as shown over here. To save you time from researching, go ahead and submit. Good. Now we got a good amount of information on target system to move on to the next stage. Let's search for the module SMTP_enum. So let's do search SMTP enum. So it looks like this is going to be the full path. And then we're going to be using the top username shortlist txt word list from the username subsection of seclist. If you don't already have it installed, you can run this command here, but by default, it's installed in this directory over here within Kali. So we'll go ahead and copy that real quick. And then we'll go ahead and type options. And then go back to the module and search for SMTP. Search SMTP enum and then select it. So select 0. Go ahead and do options. We'll be using the name user_file to set the top username shortlist txt. Set that. Let's go ahead and copy the path from up here. So this is the path to the seclist by default, and then the top usernames usernames shortlist.txt. So we went ahead and set that. So user file. Next question, once we've set this option, what is the other essential parameter we need to set? Going back to options, that'll be our host. And then set our host 10.10.69.115. Go ahead and run the exploit. Looks like you already ran. What is the username that's returned? So because you may have problems with this, I've been having problems with this machine. To kind of help you out, the username it's supposed to return is actually supposed to be the administrator user. I've tried restarting this machine multiple times, still get the same error. Tried other tools. I had to actually look at a write-up to get this far. On to task number 7. So exploiting SMTP. At the end of our enumeration section, we have a few vital pieces of information. The user account name, which is administrator, and the type of SMTP server and OS running. Which, looking at the OS, it is running Ubuntu, so it's an Ubuntu OS. So we're going to be utilizing Hydra to brute force the SSH login of our user. So you can reference the other video that we used that I have for Hydra. We can copy this syntax. This syntax will work. So let's go ahead and break it down real quick. So Hydra is the name of the tool, Hydra, so that's the tool we're running. The -T is the number of parallel connections or threads. So in this case, we'll be running 16 threads or parallel connections. -L is the username. -P is the path to the word list, which in this case we'll be using the raku.txt file. By default, this is the directory that it should be in. The -V, capital V for increasing the verbosity, the target IP, and then the protocol that we're going to be attacking. So let's go ahead and exit out of that. Go ahead and do a Hydra -T16L administrator-P user share word list raku-VV 10.10.69.115, and then the protocol, which will be SSH. While that's running, we'll go ahead and pause it while that's running. All right, now that it finished, it looks like we found the password to be Alejandro. Let's go ahead and copy that. So what is the password of the user that we found during the enumeration phase? It will be Alejandro. Now let's go ahead and SSH into the target machine. So SSH administrator at 10.10.69.115, and then hit yes, and then go ahead and paste the password of Alejandro, and we are now logged in. And now we see the smtp.txt file. Let's go ahead and cat that out. smtp.txt, and there is the flag, so let's go ahead and enter that, submit that, and on to task number 8. So let's go ahead and terminate that machine. Go to task number 9 real quick, just to go ahead and start this machine, because it could take a long time to run or a long time to boot up. Okay, so understanding MSQL. So MSQL is a relational database management system, or RDBMS, based on SQL, or structured query language. A database is a persistent, organized collection of structured data, and RDBMS is software used to create and manage databases based on a relational model where data is stored in tables. SQL is a language used for communication between the client and server. MySQL consists of the server and utility programs that handle all database instructions and communication using the MySQL protocol. It can run on various platforms and is commonly used as a backend database for prominent websites, forming an essential component of the LAMP stack. So what type of software is MySQL? It is a relational database management system. What language is MySQL based on? SQL. What communication model does MySQL use? It is the client-server communication model. What is a common application of MySQL? Backend database. And then what major social network uses MySQL as their backend database? That'll be Facebook, if you didn't already know that. On to task number 9, enumerating MySQL. So typically in this scenario, we'll have gained some kind of initial credentials from enumerating other services that we can use to enumerate and exploit the MySQL service. So this room focuses on exploiting and enumerating the network service. For the sake of this scenario, we're going to assume that we found the credentials root and password. So root and password, those are the credentials. While enumerating subdomains of a web server, in this example, we tried to log in against SSH and it was unsuccessful. So now we're going to try to use these credentials against the MySQL. So for the requirements, we have to have MySQL installed on our system to connect to the remote MySQL server. If it's not already installed, you can use this command right here to install it. It should be installed already on our Kali box. We can run nmap, so nmap-pn-t 4-a-p- and then the IP of the target machine. So I already went ahead and ran nmap for the sake of time, and we see that we get two ports back, port 22 and 3306. So 3306 is the port that MySQL is running on just from looking at the service. Good, now we think we have a set of credentials. Let's double check that by manually connecting to the MySQL server. Let's go ahead and run MySQL -h and the IP 10.10.1.0.108. That is for the IP, username root, and then P for password, and then password was password. And now we are in. Okay, now that our login credentials work, let's quit out of this session with exit and then launch up Metasploit. I'm just going to do Control D. So now we can do MSF console. Okay, cool. Now that we have it set up, let's go ahead and search for this module MySQL SQL. So search MySQL_SQL, use 0. Go ahead and copy this path. So this is the path of the module. Go ahead and submit that. Go ahead and run options now. So search for this. So what are 3 options that we need to set? 3 options that we need to set is our host, username, and then password. So, or in descending order, so that'll be password, our host, and then username. Then run the exploit. So go ahead and set password as password, set our host as 10.10.10.108, set username as root. Almost typed as root. Now if we run options again, we see everything set. Then we can go ahead and run it. So run the exploit. By default, it will test with the select version command. What is the result that it gives you? This result right here, 5.7.29. Go ahead and hit submit. Great, now we know that our exploit is landing as planned. So let's try to gain more ambitious information. Change the SQL option to show databases. How many databases are returned? I'm going to set SQL as show databases and then go ahead and hit run again. So these are the databases. So we have 4 databases that get returned back to us. So on to task number 10, exploiting MySQL. What do we know? Let's take a quick sanity check before moving on. So what we have is the MySQL server credentials, the version of MySQL running, and the number of databases and their names. So schema, so we need to understand this quick terminology. So schema is synonymous with a database. You can submit the word schema instead of database. So basically kind of the same thing. Hashes, the very simple product of a cryptographic algorithm to turn a variable length input into a fixed length output. And let's go ahead and go down to the questions. So let's search for and select the MySQL schema dump module. So we'll go ahead and do search MySQL schema dump module. Go ahead and select it out. And what is the full path of the module? Go ahead and copy that, paste it real quick. Now that you've done this a few times by now, so we've done this a few times. So set the relevant options, then run the exploit. So let's go ahead and see what options is. set password as password, set username as root. I did as root. Then our host, set our host as 10.10.110.108. And now let's go ahead and hit run. So what is the name of the last table that gets dumped? It is running at the moment. Let's give it a second. All right, now that it loaded, so the last table would be this guy right over here. Go ahead and paste that. Now that we dumped the tables and column names of the whole database, but now we can do better though. So search for and select the MySQL hash dump module. So let's go ahead and search MySQL hash dump. So what is the full module path? We'll be using the first one. And then select 0 or use 0. Let's look at the options. Set password again as password. Set our host as the target machine 110.108 and then set username as root. Go ahead and run that. So what non-default user stands out to us? That'll be Carl. That's not really a default username. So now we have another user and their password hash over here. Copy the entire hash string, so Carl and the entire hash. And let's go ahead and paste it into a file. So nano hash, and then just paste it in there. So just cat it out real quick. We see that we do have the hash there. You can name it as hash txt. I just do hash. It's just easier that way. So what is the user hash combination? It is that. Now we need to crack the password. Let's try John the Ripper. Okay. So now we'll just use John and then the hash. So what is the password that we found? Now it's cracking. So looks like that was quick. So it looks like we found doggy. Awesome. Password use is not only extremely dangerous, but extremely common. What are the chances that this user has reused their password for a different service like SSH? Let's go ahead and SSH Carl at 10.10.110.108 with the password doggy. And we are in. So let's go ahead and do an ls and then cat that file out. And there is our flag. Let's go ahead and copy that, submit it, and boom. Let's go ahead and terminate this machine. And task number 11, further learning. You can check out these two links if you want to continue learning a little bit more. But that will be it for this room. Congratulations for completing the network-based vulnerability section. The next section will hit the local host vulnerabilities. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.